She said, "Don't act like we're serious, this is just fun for me," while lounging at the beach house I rented, so I walked away and left her stranded to figure it out. Hey folks, before we jump into the video, please consider subscribing and giving a thumbs up if you're excited for more stories like this. Thank you. Let's dive in. I'm a marketing coordinator at a mid-sized tech company in San Diego, the kind of guy who actually reads the fine print and keeps spreadsheets for his personal budget. So when I met Kate at my college buddy Mike's wedding reception, I should have paid more attention to the details that didn't add up. She was working as the event photographer's assistant, this effortlessly stunning woman with auburn hair that caught the light perfectly and these piercing green eyes that seemed to see everything as a potential photo opportunity. Her laugh was infectious, the kind that made everyone turn around during the bouquet toss, and I found myself gravitating toward her during the awkward moments when the wedding party was doing their staged shots. We ended up bonding over how ridiculous some of the wedding traditions were, making quietly sarcastic comments about the groom's insistence on recreating every Pinterest wedding pose while the photographer's flash went off every 3 seconds. "I swear if I have to watch him dip her one more time, I'm going to lose it," she whispered, and something about her dry humor made me forget I'd driven 3 hours for this thing. We talked until the venue staff literally started stacking chairs around us, and that's when she told me she'd moved from Ohio 2 years ago to chase what she called the California dream, working part-time as a lifestyle blogger and aspiring influencer while doing photography gigs to pay the bills. The way she described her content creation made it sound artistic and meaningful, talking about capturing authentic moments and building a community of people who appreciated beauty in everyday life. Our first few dates felt like scenes from a romantic movie I'd normally find too cheesy to watch, but with Kate everything seemed effortless and magical. We'd do sunset hikes in Balboa Park where she'd stop every few minutes to capture the golden hour lighting, explaining how the shadows fell differently in San Diego than anywhere else she'd lived. Late-night taco runs in Little Italy became these intimate conversations about dreams and goals, her talking passionately about building her brand while I shared my own plans for advancing in marketing, both of us seeming genuinely interested in each other's ambitions. The spontaneous road trips were incredible. Driving up the coast to these hidden beaches she'd researched where the rocks created perfect natural frames for her Instagram photos. I'd watch her work, impressed by how she could find the perfect angle for everything, how she'd wait patiently for the right wave or cloud formation to create these shots that made her followers feel like they were experiencing California through her eyes. She had this way of making even mundane moments feel special, turning a simple coffee date into content about supporting local businesses, or making our grocery store runs feel like adventures when she'd photograph the perfect avocados at the farmer's market. What impressed me most was how thoughtful she seemed about everything, how she'd remember my preference for Ethiopian coffee and find these little local roasters, or how she'd suggest activities that aligned with my interests in hiking and photography, even though I was just using my phone while she had this professional setup with multiple lenses and reflectors. Looking back, I realize I was so caught up in how picture-perfect everything felt that I missed the signs that it was actually just that, perfectly crafted for the pictures rather than for us. 3 months in, I started noticing Kate's enthusiasm fluctuated directly with how Instagram-worthy our activities were, like she had some internal algorithm calculating the content potential of every moment we spent together. When I suggested quiet nights watching movies or cooking dinner at my place, she'd get this glazed look and suddenly remember she had engagement commitments or needed to respond to brand inquiries, but mention a new rooftop bar or scenic hiking trail and she'd light up like I'd just offered her a modeling contract. The pattern became impossible to ignore when her car broke down on a Tuesday morning, leaving her stranded 40 minutes from her photography gig with what turned out to be a blown transmission. I didn't hesitate to cover the $1,200 repair because that's what people do for someone they care about, right? But her response was weirdly distant, barely a thank you beyond posting an Instagram story with some generic grateful for good people caption over a sunset photo, no mention of me or what had actually happened, like my financial sacrifice was just background noise to her content creation. The low-key plans started getting canceled with increasing frequency, always for these mysterious content opportunities, with other influencers that apparently couldn't be scheduled around our existing dates. "Hey babe, can we rain check tonight? There's this collab opportunity with its Sunset Vibes SD that could really boost my engagement," she'd text while I was already sitting at the coffee shop we'd agreed to meet at, or waiting outside the movie theater with tickets I'd bought in advance. I found myself spending a lot of evenings alone, scrolling through her Instagram stories and watching her create content with people who apparently mattered more than the guy who just fixed her car. The real wake-up call came when my coworker Sarah casually mentioned seeing my mystery boyfriend aesthetic all over Kate's feed, And I had no idea what she meant until she showed me Kate's recent posts. There I was, or rather parts of me were, carefully cropped and strategically positioned to create this whole romantic narrative without actually revealing who I was. My hands holding coffee cups at places we'd been together, my jacket draped over restaurant chairs, the view from my apartment balcony captioned as date night vibes, even my reflection in her sunglasses cropped to just show a mysterious male silhouette. She'd been using our relationship as content material, creating this mysterious boyfriend character that was gaining her followers who were constantly commenting asking who he was and when they'd get to see his face. The mystery keeps them engaged, she explained when I finally confronted her about it, like I was some kind of marketing prop rather than an actual human being she was dating. It's better for my brand this way. The worst part was watching her mood shift based on her analytics, becoming distant and irritable when her follower count dropped or when posts didn't perform as well as expected. Our conversations started feeling less like genuine connection and more like business meetings where she'd analyze what content had worked and what hadn't, treating our relationship like a transaction that was only valuable as long as it generated the engagement metrics she needed. When her numbers dipped after Instagram changed their algorithm, she became genuinely unpleasant to be around, snapping at me for suggesting activities that wouldn't photograph well and making passive-aggressive comments about how I didn't understand the pressure of building a personal brand in today's economy. For Kate's 26th birthday, I decided to do something that would show her how serious I was about us, something that would prove I understood her need for beautiful experiences and aesthetic perfection, so I spent 2 months secretly planning and saving every penny from my marketing coordinator salary to rent this incredible luxury beach house in Malibu for a long weekend. The place was absolutely stunning, perched on a cliff overlooking the Pacific with floor-to-ceiling windows, a private deck with a hot tub, and direct beach access that looked like something out of a resort magazine. Exactly the kind of location Kate was always screenshotting from celebrity Instagram accounts and adding to her vision boards. I coordinated everything down to the smallest detail because that's how my brain works, stocking the house with her favorite Sancerre wine from that boutique shop in La Jolla, arranging for a private yoga instructor to lead a sunrise session on the deck because she'd mentioned wanting to get into wellness content, and even flying in her best friend Emma from Ohio as a surprise because Kate had been talking about missing her hometown connections. The whole thing cost me basically my entire savings account, about $4,800 for the weekend, but I figured this was an investment in our future, a way to create the kind of magical experience that would make her realize what we had together was worth prioritizing over follower counts and brand collaborations. When I picked her up Friday morning and told her to pack for a surprise weekend, her reaction was enthusiastic but immediately focused on logistics in a way that should have warned me what was coming. Should I bring my ring light? What about my camera equipment? Will there be good natural lighting for content? She asked, and I told myself her practical questions were just her being professional, not realizing she was already mentally calculating the posting potential rather than anticipating quality time together. The drive up the coast should have been romantic, but she spent most of it on her phone, occasionally looking up to take boomerang videos of herself with the ocean in the background or asking me to pull over so she could capture the perfect shot of her designer sunglasses reflecting the California coastline. When we arrived at the beach house and I watched her face as she took in the infinity pool, the panoramic ocean views, and the carefully curated interior design, I expected gratitude or excitement or at least some acknowledgement of the effort I'd put into planning this. Instead, she immediately started walking around with her phone out, taking test shots from different angles and muttering about lighting conditions, treating the place like a location scout rather than experiencing it as the romantic gesture I'd intended. "This is going to make incredible content," she said, which I told myself was her way of expressing appreciation, but there was something hollow about the way she said it, like she was already calculating engagement rates instead of connecting with the moment we were sharing. The surprise yoga session Saturday morning was beautiful, watching the sun rise over the Pacific while we moved through poses on the private deck, but even during Savasana I could hear Kate's phone camera clicking as she directed the instructor to take photos of her in various positions against the ocean backdrop. When Emma arrived Saturday afternoon as the big surprise, Kate seemed genuinely happy for about 10 minutes before she started positioning Emma for photos and asking her to help create content around their friendship, turning what should have been a heartfelt reunion into another content opportunity. Saturday evening should have been perfect, the three of us sharing wine and stories on the deck while the sun set over Malibu, but I found myself feeling like an outsider watching Kate perform her life rather than living it, documenting every moment instead of being present for any of them. The devastating conversation happened Sunday morning while Kate was lounging on the deck in this designer bikini I'd bought her the week before, some $180 piece from a boutique in Beverly Hills that she'd claimed was essential for her upcoming swimwear content collaborations. She was editing photos on her phone, applying filters and adjusting lighting while I sat beside her trying to process the disconnect between the romantic weekend I'd envisioned and the content creation workshop it had actually become. "Kate, can we talk for a minute?" I asked, setting down my coffee and turning to face her fully. "I've been thinking about us, about where this is heading, and I want to make sure we're on the same page about our future." She didn't look up from her phone, just made a non-committal sound while she continued swiping through editing options, and something about her complete disengagement made my chest tighten with a feeling I didn't want to acknowledge. "I mean, we've been together almost 6 months now, and I feel like we've built something really special here. I can see us taking the next steps together, maybe moving in, talking about long-term plans." That's when she finally looked up, but instead of the warm recognition I'd expected, her expression was almost amused, like I'd said something naive or presumptuous. "Jake, don't act like we're serious," she said, her voice casual and dismissive as she went back to editing her photos. "This is just fun for me. I thought you understood that." The words hit me like physical blows, each one landing with devastating clarity that reframed every moment we'd shared together, every gesture I'd interpreted as building toward something meaningful now revealed as casual entertainment for her. "Just fun," I managed to say, my voice sounding strange and distant to my own ears. "Kate, I just spent my entire savings on this weekend because I thought it meant something to both of us." She finally put her phone down and looked at me with something that might have been pity mixed with mild irritation, like I was a child who'd misunderstood the rules of a game everyone else already knew. "Look, you're sweet and you've been really helpful with things, but I'm not ready for anything serious right now. I'm focusing on building my brand, and honestly, I've been casually seeing someone else who's more aligned with my goals." The confession came out so matter-of-factly that it took me a moment to process what she'd actually said, and when I asked who, she mentioned this TikTok creator named Dylan who had over 2 million followers and was really understanding about the influencer lifestyle. "So what was I to you?" I asked, already knowing I didn't want to hear the answer. "You were like practice," she said with a shrug that somehow made everything worse. "You helped me figure out what I actually want in a relationship, and honestly, you've been great for content inspiration, but Dylan gets the business side of what I'm building in a way that you just don't." I spent that Sunday night lying awake in the master bedroom listening to Kate and Emma giggle on the deck over their third bottle of wine, processing the fact that I'd essentially been an unpaid intern in my own relationship, and somewhere around 3 a.m. I made a decision that would prove to be the smartest thing I'd done in months. While Kate slept off her wine hangover Monday morning, I quietly gathered my things and methodically went through my phone, taking screenshots of every conversation where she'd asked for money, support, or favors, every text where she'd canceled our plans for content opportunities, and every exchange that revealed the transactional nature of what I'd thought was a genuine relationship. My marketing background had taught me to document everything and anticipate problems before they escalated, so I saved conversations about the car repair, the birthday weekend expenses, even her messages asking me to drive her to photography gigs when her schedule got complicated. By dawn I had a comprehensive digital record of 6 months' worth of evidence showing exactly who had been investing what in this relationship, and I had a feeling I was going to need it based on Kate's track record of crafting narratives that painted her as the victim in every situation. I left the beach house keys with the property management company along with a note explaining that my girlfriend would need alternative transportation arrangements, then drove back to San Diego in complete silence, blocking Kate's number somewhere around Ventura when my phone started buzzing with increasingly frantic calls and texts. The 3-hour drive gave me plenty of time to think about how completely I'd been played, how every gesture I'd interpreted as building intimacy had actually been Kate extracting resources while keeping me at arm's length, using me as both financial support and content inspiration while pursuing what she actually wanted with someone else. By the time I reached my apartment, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief, like I'd finally stopped carrying a weight I didn't realize had been crushing me for months, the exhausting effort of trying to earn love from someone who saw me as a convenient resource rather than a human being worth caring about. The social media warfare began within hours of Kate realizing she was stranded at a luxury beach house 40 miles from civilization with a maxed-out credit card and no transportation, and her first move was exactly what I'd anticipated, attempting to control the narrative by making herself the victim of my sudden disappearance. Her Instagram story started around noon with cryptic posts about fake people who abandon you when you need them most, followed by increasingly desperate content about being left stranded by someone I trusted, complete with tear-stained selfies and dramatic captions about learning who people really are when things get difficult. She painted a picture of herself as this wronged woman whose generous, caring nature had been taken advantage of by someone who'd pretended to care but revealed his true colors when she needed support most, conveniently omitting any context about our conversation or her admission that I'd been nothing more than practice for her real relationship. But Kate had underestimated two things: how quickly word travels in San Diego's interconnected social scene, and how thorough I'd been in documenting our relationship dynamics. Because by Tuesday evening my screenshots were making their way through our mutual friend network faster than her victim narrative could take hold. Emma, who'd witnessed the entire weekend disaster firsthand, had apparently shared some details with their Ohio friends, and when combined with the evidence I'd quietly shared with Mike and a few other people who'd been asking what happened, a very different picture started emerging about who had actually been using whom in this relationship. The screenshots revealed months of Kate asking for financial help, canceling plans for content opportunities, and treating me like a convenient service provider rather than a romantic partner, and suddenly her Instagram stories about being abandoned started looking less like genuine hurt and more like calculated manipulation from someone angry that her safety net had disappeared. Her follower count, which had been her primary concern throughout our relationship, started dropping as people began calling her out in the comments, pointing out inconsistencies in her victim story and questioning why someone who claimed to be so heartbroken was posting professional quality content about the experience instead of privately processing what had happened. "This feels really performative," wrote one of her longtime followers, "and why are you making this public drama instead of handling it privately?" asked another, comments that clearly stung based on Kate's increasingly defensive responses and her decision to start deleting anything that didn't support her narrative. The real devastation came when several of the brands she'd been working with started distancing themselves from the drama, apparently deciding that someone who aired their relationship problems publicly and generated this kind of controversy wasn't the right fit for their family-friendly lifestyle products. I watched from the sidelines as Kate's carefully constructed influencer persona began crumbling under the weight of her own poor choices, her follower count dropping from 47,000 to under 35,000 in a matter of weeks as people realized they'd been following someone whose entire life was essentially an elaborate performance designed to extract resources from others. The final blow came when Dylan, her TikTok creator with 2 million followers, apparently decided that the drama and negative attention weren't worth whatever he'd been getting from their casual relationship, and Kate's cryptic posts about people showing their true colors became even more desperate and unhinged as she realized she'd lost both her safety net and her upgrade in the same week. 3 months after the Malibu disaster, I met Beth at a marine conservation fundraiser that my company was sponsoring, and the difference between her and Kate was so stark it was almost comical, like comparing a genuine vintage find to something mass-produced for Instagram influencers. Beth was a marine biologist who studied coral reef restoration, spoke passionately about ocean conservation without once mentioning how it looked on camera, and when I told her about my recent relationship disaster, she actually laughed out loud at Kate's behavior instead of offering sympathy or judgment. "Wait, she used your hands as anonymous content for 6 months?" Beth asked, grinning like I'd told her the best joke she'd heard all week. "That's not romantic mystery, that's just weird." Did she think she was running some kind of boyfriend witness protection program? Her genuine amusement at Kate's ridiculous behavior was incredibly refreshing compared to the dramatic victim narratives I'd been subjected to, and I found myself laughing about the whole experience for the first time instead of feeling embarrassed or manipulated by it. Beth didn't even have an Instagram account, claiming that spending her days underwater photographing coral formations was enough visual documentation for one lifetime, and our early dates involved activities that existed purely for our own enjoyment rather than content creation opportunities. We'd go to this hole-in-the-wall sushi place where the fish was incredible but the lighting was terrible for photos, or spend Saturday mornings at the tide pools where Beth would explain the ecosystem relationships with the kind of genuine enthusiasm Kate had only shown when discussing follower engagement rates. The best part was how Beth actually listened when I talked about my work, asking thoughtful questions about marketing strategies and consumer psychology, treating my professional insights as valuable rather than dismissing them as boring compared to her more glamorous pursuits. 6 months into what had become a genuinely healthy relationship, Kate made her grand reappearance at my company's holiday party, an event she only knew about because she'd apparently been monitoring our mutual friends' social media activity and pieced together the details from their posts about attending. I spotted her across the room immediately, partly because she stood out in her obvious desperation to look perfect, but mostly because she looked fundamentally different from the confident influencer I'd dated, like someone who'd been systematically deflated and was trying to reinflate herself through sheer force of will. Her Instagram perfect styling was still there, but it looked forced and desperate now, like she was cosplaying her former self, and when she approached our table where Beth and I were sitting with my coworkers, her smile had that brittle quality of someone who knew they were about to make a scene but couldn't stop themselves. "Jake, hi, I was hoping I'd run into you here," she said, completely ignoring Beth and the obvious fact that we were clearly together, her voice carrying that performative warmth she'd always used when she wanted something. "I've been doing a lot of self-reflection lately, and I realize I made some huge mistakes with us. I found myself, and I keep coming back to the fact that you were the real one all along." The audacity was breathtaking, showing up to my workplace event to declare her newfound enlightenment while completely disrespecting my current relationship, but what really struck me was how hollow she looked despite the perfect makeup and designer dress, like someone going through the motions of being the person she used to be. "Kate, I'd like you to meet Beth, my girlfriend," I said calmly, putting my arm around Beth, who was watching this unfold with the fascinated attention of a scientist observing unusual behavior in the wild. "Beth, this is Kate, the influencer I told you about." Kate's face flickered with recognition and something that looked like panic as she realized Beth wasn't just some random date but someone who knew the full story of our relationship, and her attempts to maintain control of the situation became increasingly desperate and obvious. "We had something really special, Jake," she continued, as if Beth wasn't sitting right there. "I know I wasn't ready for it then, but I am now. I've learned so much about what really matters, and it's not followers or content or any of that surface stuff. It's real connection, real love, and what we had was real." The irony of her speech was incredible considering she was delivering it as a performance to an audience of my coworkers, treating her supposed realization about authentic connection as another opportunity to be the center of attention, and I could see Beth trying not to laugh at the complete lack of self-awareness involved. "Kate, you told me not to act like we were serious," I said, my voice carrying clearly enough that several nearby tables turned to watch what was obviously becoming a scene. "You said I was just practice while you figured out what you actually wanted. I took your advice and found someone who actually wants to be serious with me." Her face crumpled at hearing her own words reflected back at her, the casual cruelty of her dismissal now landing on her with the full weight of consequence, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her before remembering the months of manipulation and financial exploitation she'd put me through. "But I was confused then," she said, her voice breaking as she realized her grand gesture was backfiring spectacularly. "I was scared of real intimacy, but I know now that you're the one I want to build something meaningful with. We could be amazing together if you just gave me another chance." The desperation in her voice was palpable, and I could see my coworkers exchanging glances as they watched someone completely melt down at what was supposed to be a professional networking event, their perception of Kate shifting from mysterious ex-girlfriend to unstable intruder in real time. "I'm already building something amazing," I said, looking at Beth, who squeezed my hand supportively. "With someone who knew she wanted to be serious from the beginning, who doesn't see relationships as content opportunities, and who's never asked me to be anything other than exactly who I am." Kate's final attempt at manipulation was asking to speak with me privately, claiming there were things she needed to say that were too personal for public consumption, but I declined as politely as possible and suggested she focus on her own life instead of trying to resurrect something she'd explicitly told me wasn't serious. She left the party shortly after, but not before I saw her taking a selfie in the bathroom mirror with red eyes and smudged makeup, apparently planning to turn even her public humiliation into content, and sure enough, the next morning brought a final Instagram story about fake people who abandon you when you need them most, and learning that some people can't handle a strong woman's growth. The post got about 12 likes, mostly from accounts that looked like bots, and by the afternoon she deleted it along with most of her recent content, apparently finally understanding that her influence days were over and that real life required different skills than manufactured authenticity. Beth and I have been together for over a year now, building something based on mutual respect, genuine compatibility, and the revolutionary concept of actually enjoying each other's company without documenting every moment for public consumption, and sometimes I think about how Kate's manipulation actually led me to something infinitely better than what I thought I wanted.